We all have heard about different simulation theories, but somebody had to put all the obvious and basic evidence together to demonstrate how life is literally a simulation and nothing else. So here I am with the video that you can show to people when you want to speak about a factual simulation theory. Hopefully, it is going to give you guys a new insight. We live in a world of endless distractions, engaged in the life routines and activities that are designed to lock us down, stopping us from wondering how we ended up being here. But what if this reality, this world we call home, is not what it seems? What if we are living in a carefully crafted simulation on a digital playground programmed to keep us in line and keep us from asking the ultimate question? Is this life real? When we talk about simulation theories, our imaginations often drift to simulations crafted by humans, machines, or even aliens. But let's shift our perspective for a moment. If our lives are indeed simulations created by any of these forces, then what we might perceive as real must be another layer of a simulation. Think about it. If they have simulated this world, then they must be in another simulated world done by someone else, in which different matter would still have the same certain abilities to get together to become a pile of rocks, a bunch of water, or even biological beings on some round place called a planet. We have been questioning the origin of life and the cosmos for thousands of years, but we still are not even sure where we are and why we are here. We even have no idea about what lies beneath the Earth's surface, under the oceans, or in the vastness of space. Perhaps we will never be able to uncover the ultimate truth because of our cognitive limitations, but we certainly can take a close look at what we have as the evidence of the real. Some physicists like Michio Kaku, the Stanford University professor, try to answer the simulation question this way.
It is mathematically not possible to create a fictional universe out of atoms in a fictional way. Is it possible? Yes. Is it computable? Probably not. So in other words, chances are we do not live in a computer simulation. Sorry about that.
But this kind of sounds like a twisted answer. If the world was a simulation, it wouldn't have made sense if we wanted to validate this fact by judging it based on our calculations and our abilities as humans trapped in this simulation, right? If the world is a simulation, it must have originated from an external universe completely different from our own. A universe inhabited by a form of life far more advanced and beyond the concepts and capacities that we understand. Just like how this worm on the tree or on your apple would only probably understand you as just a source of vibration or heat or whatever basic thing they can understand. A worm would never have the least amount of understanding about countless dimensions of a human's life. Imagine the desire for fame, or our diet trends, or the concept of love. You can imagine how I can continue this list forever before I run out of options on how worms cannot grasp the full scope of human existence. So if we consider our understanding limitations, we are for sure missing out on entire realms of life and intelligence that are beyond our comprehension. We must become aware that there are obvious signs in front of our eyes every day and everywhere which we do not understand with our scale of consciousness. Something just like this dog that thinks the ball would actually go from that 2D image to our 3D world so that she can catch it. Now, let's see what evidence of a potential simulation theories that we are missing to notice. You might know about most of the fundamentals I am going to explain, but be patient to go through the evidence altogether because it is the most basic and obvious things that we ignore the most. There is even no need to include the complex quantum experiments and phenomenons. The basic things are already speaking of the existence of a simulation. Let's start with the universe's building blocks, which are atoms. Just as digital information is encoded in binary, enabling the creation of complex simulations and virtual realities with two simple digits, our material world is encoded in nature's own programming language, a combination of 118 elements that are the building blocks of everything we see, touch, and experience. Us and everything around us, from the tiniest grain of sand to the neighbor's dog to the most distant star, is literally programmed with these 118 elements of creation. Each element is literally a letter in the cosmic alphabet that programs the diversity of our material world. The periodic table is basically the source code from which our world is programmed. To understand how these elements have exactly put our universe together, we must see what these elements are made of and how they make different materials gain their chemical state and look the way they look. Each element is basically a single atom, like oxygen, carbon, hydrogen atoms. But what are these in their essence? Atoms are built of three charged particles: electrons with negative electrical charge, protons with positive charge, and neutrons that are neutral. Protons are in the nucleus, while electrons move around them in orbitals similar to a probability cloud. You might ask what makes each one of these elements or atoms different from one another. Each atom has a different number of protons and electrons, so it's just the count of electrically charged particles that dictates their chemical characteristics. For example, helium has 2 electrons and 2 protons, while gold has 79 of each. But the electricity is never alone. Electricity and magnetism are two sides of the same coin, forming a fundamental force of nature called electromagnetism that manifests as a wave, with the electric and magnetic fields perpendicular to each other. Ampere's law says that the presence of an electric field can create magnetic force, like how the scrapyard magnets are made. And a moving magnet can produce electricity, which is how generators work. There is a mind-bending fact about atoms that you may have heard. 99.99% of an atom is empty space, which means 99.99% of everything is empty or in plasma state. So what do we have here? The universe's building blocks are essentially simulated with the void electrically charged particles with no material characteristics as we see or understand. Take a look at this car. It does not exist. In fact, it is an optical illusion. It is just a cosmic render, projected with an astronomically huge number of void atoms, appearing to be a 2-ton solid piece of metal from your portal of consciousness, which is assigned to you by the system. This is one easy way to understand how different types of matter are formed due to the density of their atoms. Imagine a crowded dance floor where everyone is tightly packed and only moves slightly. That would be solid matter. Now imagine a less crowded dance floor where people can move past each other more freely, but are still close together. That's liquids. Finally, imagine a huge empty room where people can move freely in any direction without bumping into each other. We have gas. This pops the question, why can't we pass our fingers through solid matter or see through them if they are simply made of void atoms? That is because of the electromagnetic force between the electrons of the atoms in our finger and the electrons of the atoms in the solid object that are all densely packed together. No two atoms can occupy the same quantum state. This means our fingers and solid objects' electrons repel each other and do not allow merging. If everything is fundamentally composed of electrically charged particles, does that mean that the world is a digital render that exists in plasma state? The answer is yes. This is where it gets interesting. For the actual programming of different matter to take place, 2 or more of the same or different atoms must bond together to make molecules, which are the units that make complex compounds like water, nicotine, or caffeine. Everything is programmed with the help of electricity and magnetism. If you look closer at your surroundings, you'd see that everything is a bunch of codes. Everything has its own specific program lines. For example, for a water molecule, 1 oxygen and 2 hydrogen atoms are required. As a more complex example, for that delicious caffeine molecule in your coffee to be built, 8 carbon, 10 hydrogen, 4 nitrogen, and 2 oxygen atoms are required. Isn't that amazing? You modify the amount of electric charges to make different pixels, and then put these pixels together with certain combinations and make different images. Speaking of codes, let's see how something like DNA is coded to code. DNA resides in each of the approximately 37 trillion cells in our body, and it contains the instructions within its chemical codes for how an organism looks, develops, and responds to its environment. The information that DNA carries is encrypted into it by these 4 molecules that are referred to as A, T, C, and G. The sequence of these molecules along the DNA strands determines our genetic codes. How many combinations do you think there can be in order to keep making unique individual characters in our simulation? The number of possible unique combinations is far greater than all the atoms in the observable universe. And that's while there are thousands of billions of atoms in a single cube of sugar. Each DNA within each cell signals that cell to function according to its genetic code. Whether it needs to decay or divide into 2 cells, it's the DNA that determines this process. Not only does DNA carry the data of the genetic codes, it also has a large capacity to store more data. Converting binary encryption to genetic encryption technology is possible but not yet commercialized due to the costs and slow write and read speed. However, this is just a matter of time until this technology becomes publicly available, and when it does, we will potentially access millions of gigabytes of storage space within our body, offering more space than we could ever generate media for in a lifetime. It's remarkable to think that the entire data of all global data centers could be stored in just 1 gram of DNA, while one human body contains 20 grams of DNA. We essentially carry our own internal data centers wherever we go. Our DNA functions not only as a biological hard drive, but also as a unique serial number, leaving an identifiable trace wherever we are. This concept isn't entirely alien to us. Consider how we engineer unique identifiers for things to ensure they can be traced and identified. Our cars have VIN numbers, our money has serial numbers, and our online or bank accounts come with the unique IDs. These identifiers help us manage and track objects in our world. Nature has assigned each of us a unique identifier in our DNA to distinguish us from one another, not just genetically but also by giving us a mind and consciousness that collects and stores all the data related to us since childhood. Next time you want to refer to your mind as yours, don't forget that you don't even have access to almost 95% of your mind's content. We have access to only around 5% of our mind, known as the conscious mind, which involves thoughts, perceptions, and memories, while around 95% of our mind is subconscious, responsible for our emotions like fear, or non-voluntarily actions like breathing, and automatic processes like driving. Almost all of our life experiences are stored in the subconscious mind, and they heavily impact our conscious mind, even though we may not be aware of them. Even when we are asleep, our subconscious mind is still online, busy processing information, consolidating memories, and solving problems. The subconscious mind operates and stores information through the brain's complex neural networks, managing automatic processes, instincts, and deep patterns by utilizing electrical signals. So, if the subconscious mind impacts the conscious mind profoundly with the information we do not even know of, then just like a character in a game, we do not have any control over what we like and dislike. How do you think you chose to like cherries or dislike grapes? Do you think you are the one who makes all the decisions and choices you make? According to Dr. Robert Sapolsky, a Stanford professor of biology and neurology, we can do what we want, but we can't choose what is it that we want. He says our decisions, big and small, are boxed in by the hormones in our blood and the receptors in our brains at the moment of an action, our emotional state in the hours before, our sleep from the night before, the development of our prefrontal cortex in adolescence, our stress and fear level as children, the fetal environment we developed in, the genes we were born with, and the culture we descend from. If we are not supposed to have access to the information in our subconscious mind and it continues to function even when we are not conscious, doesn't it resemble a black box for the Lord of the simulation to study us, or for us to study ourselves in case we have stepped into this simulation by our choice or knowledge? We are literally biochemical robots. Our body system acts like a complex machine, with bones providing the framework and muscles acting as the motors providing us the ability to move and perform actions. And yes, the muscle motors are also working with electricity. Everything does. Let me give you a few examples. Take the cells' communication. They use electrical signals to communicate with each other. Photoreceptor cells in the retina of our eye convert light into electrical signals sent to the brain. That's how we are able to see. Hair cells in the inner ear convert sound waves into electrical signals for us to hear. Our skin contains various receptors that convert stimuli like pressure and temperature into electrical signals sent to the brain for us to feel. The receptors inside the nose convert the chemical information from the odor molecules into electrical signals. Neurons in our nervous system and brain are the little messengers that communicate with each other through electrical signals, enabling thought, memory, and controlling body functions. Our heart generates its own electrical signals to regulate heartbeat. This process ensures that the heart pumps blood to the brain, carrying nutrition and oxygen with it. So when you die, it is actually your electricity that is gone and nothing works anymore because you are an unplugged robot. That's why they try to bring you back with electroshock if the body is intact and the person is just dead. Even the earth we walk on has electric voltage and it works as a chargeable battery. The earth has a total negative electric charge and gets charged by lightning, solar radiation, and cosmic rays, while the atmosphere on top of earth has a positive charge. There is a 400,000 volt voltage difference between the two, spread all over the surface of Earth. Is this simply a huge battery powering the Earth and life on it? Electricity is alive and we are of it. Without electricity, not even a grain of dust can exist. But here's the thing. Electricity needs a medium with atoms to travel through. It cannot travel through the void. So, the solution of our programmed simulation for observing and manipulating information within the simulation was light. You see, light is one of the most weird simulation-like properties of our world, but it is not exactly what most of you might think it is. Light is not just the visible light, but also the invisible light spectrums plus radio waves, all working with the same mechanism of electromagnetism. So, what is light? Let me explain, because this is interesting how electrical charges again are the creators of the fastest thing in our universe. Light is an electromagnetic radiation made by electrons. Here's how. Electrons exist at different energy levels. When an electron absorbs energy from heat or electricity, it jumps to a higher energy level. After the electron falls back down to a lower energy level, it releases its energy as a packet of light called a photon. To better understand the difference between electric current and light, while both of them are electromagnetic, think of electricity as water flowing through a pipe, whereas light, being electromagnetic radiation, is like the ripples spreading across the surface of a pond. Light and radio waves are literally invisible cables carrying massive amount of data, and nobody seems to pay attention to it as they are literally surrounding us everywhere, coming from the cosmos and man-made sources, bringing and taking data with them, just like the principle of optic cables that transfer data in the form of light waves that can travel thousands of miles. The visible light gives us the simplest kind of data, and that is to shine at the matter around us and reflect back to our eyes, making us able to see our environment. But there is way more than that. Analyzing the light rays and radio waves reflected back from the Earth's surface can provide a wealth of information about various properties of the Earth. For example, they can be used to detect and monitor different types of vegetation of an area and their health status. You can estimate biomass, which is the amount of living and dead biological material in a given area. Even chlorophyll in plants or the organic matter in the soil can be analyzed. Geological properties of a planet, its shape and topography, where water bodies are located, temperature in different areas, and who knows what else can be read by analyzing the light and radio waves reflected back from the Earth. If you have made it this far, I truly appreciate your support and your time. Thank you so much. Everything I have shared, along with the countless other clues, points unmistakably toward the idea that we are living in a simulated matrix. We have become advanced enough to transfer data through light and radio waves, build intricate electronic systems, create unique identifiers, and even use coding and programming for simulations and in chemistry. These are the built-in features of the matrix which we have learned to harness, much like the programmer of the simulation would, though on a smaller scale. It's interesting that the physics community hasn't yet collectively acknowledged the fact that we are simulated beings, both conscious and unconscious, existing within an electrical matrix. So you tell me, what do you make of all this? Do you think we are living in a simulation?